channel and welcome to another instalment of the Sunday Sunshine Show. Most of you probably know, but I've got some new subscribers and they may not know. Every Sunday I collaborate on a Sunday morning at 7:30. The video goes out and I collaborate with three other YouTubers. And we call ourselves the Transatlantic housewives. It's just a bit of a joke, really. And there's Maria Crocker. Her channel's Maria Crocker. I'll link the channels. Geordie Grandma. And then there's Busy Bee Marie, who lives in Las Vegas. Hence the name, the Transatlantic housewives. Anyway, we all get together and discuss different topics, do different things, you know. And anybody got any ideas what you want us to do? We're open to suggestions, as long as they're all, you know, okay ones. Well, today what we thought we'd do is we'd talk about our childhood memories, like growing up. I mean, we different ages, so we probably grew up in different eras. I'm the old lady of the group, so I was born in 1949. Excuse me. So, I'm going to talk about the 50s and the 60s. You know, my younger growing up years was in the 50s. And at that time, I lived in Yorkshire. And then, funnily enough, as it got to the 60s, I moved to Lancashire, where I live now. When did we move? Probably moved. I think I was either 10 or 11. I think I was 10 when we moved. Probably 1959, 1960. So spent most of the 60s in Lancashire. So in Yorkshire in the 1950s, growing up, well, it was so different from what it is today. I remember the first memory I ever had, and I've probably told you this before, but it was of the Queen's coronation. I can vividly remember the street party and the fact that it rained, and we all got a little spoon with the Queen's head on, you know, and that was given to all the children where I came from, which was Halifax. So, and I do remember that. And then where I lived in Halifax, it was a street. It sort of we didn't really have a garden. It was like a yard at the back and straight on the street at the front. And most of the people who lived there had outside toilets. For some reason, I've no idea why, we had a bathroom. So, I mean, we lived with my granddad, who was my dad's dad, and I really don't know much about his side of the family. I really wished I did know more. But we lived with them, with him, should I say. And my memories are, we used to play out in the street a lot. I mean, it's so different from today because there was no traffic, and children were at liberty to play freely, really. Oh, do you know there's a big magpie just landed on top of my tree? One for sorrow. Come on, we need another one. I'll tell you if I see another one. And so we used to play. I mean, there was no TVs or telephones. I mean, I'm not exactly sure when the TVs came in, but I remember my nana and granddad. My granddad was one of the first people I know. Oh, I can see another magpie. I'm okay. My granddad was one of the first people I know to have a TV, and he always used to potter around. He always had, you know, as I grew up later on, he had loads of old TVs in his loft, in his attic, as they call it, where he was always pottering around and rebuilding them and what have you. Because I remember there was all valves and what have you in it. And he had this TV, but the TV was so different then because you only got, there was no such thing as breakfast TV. It came on at lunchtime. And I always remember I used to go round when I was little every day to their house because they just lived a few streets away from where we did to watch with Mother. And I can remember exactly, it used to be, and this was just a short 15-minute programme that was in the middle of the day. The television then went off again and didn't come on again till tea time. So much different from, I mean, there was only one channel, which was BBC. So different from today. And I remember Monday, it was called Watch with Mother. And there was Monday it was Picture Book. Tuesday I think it was Andy Pandy. Wednesday it was the Wooden Tops. It's coming back to me now. Thursday was Ragtag and Bobtail. Oh no, was Friday the Wooden Tops? There was Picture Book, and there was Ragtag and Bobtail was on a Thursday. So maybe Picture Book was a Wednesday. I'm not sure. Oh no, I'm telling a lie. There was Picture Book, but it was the Wooden Tops, and then it was Bill and Ben on a Friday. Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men. I don't know if you remember that. Probably before most of your time. Then we used to read a lot because everybody liked reading. Well, most people like reading. And I used to love reading Enid Blyton. From being very young, I used to read the Noddy books. And then I used to love to go to bed with a book and read. I used to read all the Famous Five and the Secret Seven, An Island of Adventure, you know, all the ones that she used to... I probably read every book she wrote. I loved them. But in a way, when I think back, the children in those books' lives were so different from us. You know, they all had a nanny and used to go on these picnics with pineapple chunks and pilchard sandwiches and things like that. It was so different. And the other things that I remember as well, well, one of the things was my granddad, because he had a taxi business, my granddad, and he was the only taxi driver at the time in Halifax. And he had a phone. Well, nobody had phones, and it was the old dial phone, you know. Well, nobody had phones in those days. And everybody on the street used to come and use my granddad's phone. And they just used to walk in, you know, and you'd be sat there, and it was right near the TV. And you'd be sat there if I went to stay at my nana and granddad's, and they'd come in and use the phone, and they'd be right in front of the TV, and my granddad was getting mad because he always liked his football results on a Saturday, things like that. So that's the memories I had of that. And my nana and granddad only had an outside toilet, which in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the night, it was awful. It was lethal because you had to go down some steps, you know, at the bottom. Well, I can't say garden, it was a yard, you know. So, and we used to play things like whip and top and hula hoop. I can remember the hula hoop and hopscotch, all sorts of things like that. I have got a photo of me in the 50s, and I'll try and put it on, and it's to God you should see as we look right scruffy kids. Here's a few of us stood up against a wall. And then in the the other thing I remember, now I don't know whether this was the 60s or the 70s, I remember the toothpaste in a tin. You used to get toothpaste in a tin with a lid on, and it was like solid and it was pink. I think it was Gibbs it was called. I'm not too sure, but I can remember that, the toothpaste in the tin. And the Fairy Liquid bottles in a white bottle, you know, Fairy Liquid. And everybody only ever used Fairy soap and Vosine shampoo. I can't remember anything else. No such thing as conditioners and fabric conditioners, none of that. None of these sprinkly things that you put in your washer now to make them, the things that they tell us we think we need, but... we didn't have anything like that, and probably a lot less waste. We used to have, a pot man that came round and sell like bottles of lemonade and what have you. He used to come round every week, and you used to return your bottles to him because he took them back for recycling. So recycling's not a new thing. I mean, I can remember as children we used to go collecting jam jars, and we used to take them to the recycling plant. And they used to give us like coppers for them. I've forgotten how much it was, like 3 for a penny or something like that. But you used to get a little bit of money doing that. So all that's not new. And the other thing that I remember a lot, I remember collecting caterpillars and putting them in a jar. And you don't see caterpillars quite the same. I mean, they're obviously around, but you know, there used to be loads of caterpillars I used to see. And then sort of moving on to the 60s, at that time I came to live near where I am now on the Fylde coast. And well, I did notice differences. There were differences in things that we did, you know. You call things different, you know, like we used to call them tea cakes in Yorkshire. In Lancashire they called them barm cakes, you know. bread rolls. I don't know, all sorts of different things like that I'd never heard of when I came here. Expressions people said. I can remember people used to say, oh, it's dead good. I'd never heard that expression in Yorkshire. And I used to think, well, how can it be good if it's dead? You know, what a weird thing. But you do say things like that. I mean, now they say the most ridiculous things, don't they? So anyway, in the 60s was the time that I sort of started going to youth clubs, sort of like I think you went at 13 to a youth club, usually attached to a church. And that used to be once a week. And then once a month, they used to have a youth club dance. And I can remember the singer, Ian Anderson, from Jethro Tull. He used to play at our youth club dances. You wouldn't believe it, would you? You know, our times have changed. And then we used to go to coffee bars. I don't know if you remember coffee bars. I mean, nowadays, I think it's a bit of a shame because youngsters of that age don't really have anywhere to go. But we used to go to coffee bars. And I remember we used to drink hot Vimto in like a glass mug in a red plastic holder. It was lovely. I used to love it, the hot Vimto. And you used to sit in there all night with just one or two of these hot Vimtos so you could stay in. And there used to be flipper tables that you could play. I used to love playing the flipper tables. And then the miniskirt came in with Mary Quant and the miniskirt and the Beatles. They all, you know, it all exploded, all the music, the 60s music. Oh, I used to love them playing the Beatles and all those songs at the youth club dance. And used to have the top 10 on the TV. And Did Ready Steady Go, was that in then? I'm not sure whether that didn't come until the 70s. But you used to have the top, every week you used to watch the top 10 on the TV and Top of the Pops. And then you also, the radio stations were different. We only had Radio Luxembourg for music. It was like what we would call Radio 1. No, not Radio 1, probably like Radio 2 or Radio 3. There was no pop music channels. So the only thing there was Radio Luxembourg. And Radio Luxembourg used to do the top 20 every week, and everybody used to listen to it. Then came in the pirate ships and with the pirate radio stations. Oh, and I used to think I was so cool listening to Radio Caroline because it was illegal, because you weren't allowed to listen to these pop stations. And they broadcast in the sea for quite a number of years. Really, really good. I had some really top DJs who went out to the ships where they were broadcasting from, and they used to broadcast pop music. Well, you didn't really have pop music channels apart from like Radio Luxembourg. So eventually they did stop them, and then that's when we got Radio 1. And I mean, now there's a multitude of different radio systems, isn't there, stations? But that was what it was like in the 60s. I'm not sure whether it was the 60s or the early 70s, the pirate radio ships, but it's in my memory, so it'll do. Yeah, so there was all sorts of things that we did in the 60s. I mean, I can remember you used to roll your skirt up to make it really short. See, I think a lot of girls do that nowadays as well, you know. And the op art, black and white, it was called op art, and that was like from Mary Quant, and everything was like black and white. It's amazing what you can remember, really. Growing up, things were so different. Are they better or are they worse? I'm not sure. Children nowadays don't seem to get the same opportunities at freedom like we did years ago. And they probably, I mean, I think a lot of children do read, but it was your only entertainment because there was no TV, no computer games. So it's fond memories for me, really fond memories. But it's not to say that this era is any worse. There's lots of good things about it, like YouTube. So would I be sat here in my living room at 74-year-olds broadcasting in the 60s and the 50s? Because there was nowhere to broadcast. So anyway, I've been prattling on a long time. I think I better stop. So I hope you've enjoyed my memories of the 50s and the 60s. And that's the end of my Sunday Sunshine show, because I think I've overrun the time that we allocate ourselves, but I'll probably edit some of it out. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I want you now to pop along to the other girls' channels. So that's Maria Crocker, Karen from Geordie Grandma, and Marie from Busy Bee Marie. That's Marie with 2 E's. So I'll put the channels across the front of here, and I'll put them in my description box. So I'll see you in my next video, which I'm not sure what it'll be, because on Monday I'm going to Warner's at Stratford. So I will be doing some vlogging down there, but whether I'll be able to get any out or not, I don't know. And just to say, I had a lovely birthday, and thank you all so much for the lovely birthday wishes. And if it's any of your birthdays out there, well, happy birthday. Okay, bye-bye.